The year 1917 witnessed an earth-shattering event, the Russian Revolution. This monumental upheaval didn't just alter the political landscape of Russia, it sent ripples across the entire globe, forever changing the course of history. This wasn't just a change in rulers, it was a complete societal upheaval. The streets of Petrograd were filled with fervent demonstrators, their voices echoing the collective yearning for change, for a new order that promised to dismantle the old oppressive structures. Tsarist rule, an autocracy that had reigned for centuries, was toppled. The abdication of Tsar Nicholas II marked the end of a dynasty that had long held an iron grip over the Russian people. Symbols of the Tsarist regime were torn down, signaling the end of an era. In its place rose a new force, the Soviets. These councils, composed of workers and soldiers, emerged as the new power brokers, embodying the revolutionary spirit that sought to reshape society from the ground up. These councils of workers and soldiers promised a radical vision power to the people. They envisioned a society where the working class would no longer be subjugated by the elite, but would instead hold the reins of power, steering the nation towards a more equitable future. The revolution sent shockwaves across the world, igniting hopes for a more just and equitable future. In many countries, oppressed peoples looked to Russia with newfound hope, believing that they too could overthrow their oppressors and build a society based on equality and justice. It also sparked fear among established powers, marking the beginning of a global ideological struggle between communism and capitalism. Leaders in the West viewed the rise of the Soviets with alarm, fearing the spread of revolutionary fervor to their own shores. The Russian Revolution wasn't a single event, but a series of upheavals. It was a complex and multifaceted process, marked by a series of dramatic and often violent confrontations that gradually dismantled the old order and paved the way for the new. It began with the February Revolution, which forced the Tsar's abdication and led to the formation of a provisional government. This initial phase was characterized by a spontaneous uprising of the masses, driven by widespread discontent with the Tsarist regime. This government, however, was caught between the demands for democratic reforms and the ongoing war with Germany. The provisional government struggled to maintain control, facing pressure from both the revolutionary forces and the demands of a war-weary populace. In October, a second revolution, led by Vladimir Lenin's Bolshevik Party, overthrew the provisional government. This decisive moment saw the Bolsheviks seize key government buildings in Petrograd, effectively taking control of the state apparatus. The Bolsheviks, promising peace, land, and bread, seized power in the name of the Soviets, ushering in a new era for Russia and the world. Their slogans resonated deeply with the war-weary and impoverished masses who saw in the Bolsheviks a chance for a better future. The impact of the Russian Revolution was profound. It not only transformed Russia, but also set the stage for a new global order, challenging the existing power structures and inspiring revolutionary movements worldwide. It led to the creation of the Soviet Union, the world's first socialist state. This new entity sought to build a society based on Marxist principles, aiming to eliminate class distinctions and create a state where the means of production were owned collectively. This, in turn, inspired communist movements and revolutions around the globe. From China to Cuba, revolutionary leaders looked to the Soviet Union as a model for their own struggles, seeking to replicate its success in their own countries. The revolution also had a profound impact on international relations, shaping the Cold War that dominated the latter half of the 20th century. The ideological battle between the capitalist West and the communist East defined global politics for decades, influencing conflicts and alliances around the world. Even today, the legacy of 1917 continues to be debated and analyzed, offering valuable lessons about the complexities of revolution, the promises and perils of ideology, and the enduring human desire for freedom and equality. Historians and political scientists continue to study the events of 1917, seeking to understand the forces that drove the revolution and its lasting impact on the world. To understand the Russian Revolution, we must first journey back to the years leading up to 1917. This period was marked by profound social, economic, and political turmoil that set the stage for one of the most significant upheavals in modern history. Russia, under Tsar Nicholas II, was a land of stark contrasts. The vast empire stretched from Europe to Asia, encompassing a diverse array of cultures, languages, and traditions. Yet, despite its size and diversity, The country was united under the autocratic rule of the Tsar. The opulence of the Tsar's court and the privileged elite stood in stark contrast to the poverty and hardship endured by the vast majority of Russians. The glittering ballrooms and lavish banquets of the aristocracy were worlds apart from the daily struggles of the common people. The peasantry, which constituted the bulk of the population, lived in abject poverty, toiling endlessly on land they did not own. These peasants worked from dawn till dusk, their lives dictated by the seasons and the whims of their landlords. Despite their hard work, they saw little reward, and their living conditions were often squalid. Industrialization, while underway, was creating a new class of urban workers who faced harsh working conditions, low wages and limited rights. Factories sprang up in cities, drawing people from the countryside in search of better opportunities. However, the reality of factory life was grim, with long hours, dangerous conditions, and little to no job security. Political life under the Tsar was one of repression and autocracy. The Tsar wielded absolute power, and any form of political dissent was swiftly and brutally crushed. The secret police, known as the Okhrana, kept a watchful eye on the populace, rooting out any signs of rebellion. Nicholas II, believing in his divine right to rule, held absolute power and showed little tolerance for dissent. He was convinced that his authority was ordained by God, and he saw any challenge to his rule as a direct affront to this divine order. Political opposition, while present, was brutally suppressed by the Tsar's secret police. Activists, intellectuals, and anyone suspected of harboring anti-Tsarist sentiments were arrested, imprisoned, or exiled. The climate of fear stifled any meaningful political discourse and left many feeling hopeless and disenfranchised. Years of discontent and simmering resentment were further aggravated by Russia's involvement in World War I. The war placed an enormous strain on the country's resources and exacerbated existing social and economic problems. The war proved disastrous for Russia, both militarily and economically. The front lines were scenes of unimaginable carnage, and the Russian army, ill-prepared for the modern warfare they faced, suffered catastrophic losses. The Russian army, ill-equipped and poorly led, suffered humiliating defeats at the hands of the German army. Soldiers were sent into battle with inadequate supplies, and morale plummeted as the death toll rose. The sense of futility and despair among the troops mirrored the growing discontent back home. On the home front, the war exacerbated existing problems. The economy, already fragile, was pushed to the brink of collapse. Factories struggled to keep up with the demands of war production, and the agricultural sector was hit hard by the loss of labor to the front lines. Food shortages became commonplace and inflation soared. Basic necessities became luxuries, and the sight of long lines for bread became a daily reality for many Russians. The cost of living skyrocketed, and wages failed to keep pace, leading to widespread hunger and desperation. The Tsar's decision to personally take command of the army in 1915 proved to be a grave miscalculation. His presence at the front did little to improve the military situation and left the government in the hands of his wife, Alexandra. Leaving his politically inept wife, Alexandra, in charge of the government further eroded public trust in the monarchy. Alexandra, heavily influenced by the mystic Rasputin, made a series of disastrous decisions that further alienated the populace and the political elite. By 1917, Russia was a powder keg of discontent, ripe for revolution. The combination of military failures, economic hardship, and political mismanagement created a perfect storm of revolutionary fervor. The Tsarist regime, increasingly isolated and out of touch with the realities facing its people, teetered on the brink of collapse. The stage was set for a dramatic and violent upheaval that would change the course of Russian history forever. Amidst the chaos and discontent that gripped Russia in the early 20th century, a new form of political organization began to take shape from the grassroots level, the Soviets. The term Soviet simply means council in Russian, and these councils were formed organically by workers, soldiers, and peasants who were seeking a voice in the turbulent political landscape. They served as platforms for expressing grievances, coordinating strikes, and demanding better living and working conditions. These councils became the heartbeat of the revolutionary spirit, providing a structured way for the masses to channel their frustrations and aspirations. The first Soviets emerged during the 1905 revolution, a precursor to the more famous 1917 revolution. This earlier uprising was a significant moment in Russian history, as it laid the groundwork for the revolutionary movements that would follow. Although the 1905 revolution was brutally suppressed by the Tsarist regime, the idea of Soviets as organs of popular power took root and continued to grow in the collective consciousness of the Russian people. The Soviets were inherently democratic institutions, embodying the principles of direct representation and grassroots participation. They were organized from the bottom up, with representatives elected directly by workers, soldiers, and peasants. This bottom-up approach was revolutionary in itself, contrasting sharply with the top-down autocratic rule of the Tsarist regime. This stood in stark contrast to the autocratic Tsarist regime and even the provisional government that replaced it after the February Revolution of 1917. The provisional government, despite its promises of reform, struggled to maintain order and address the needs of the people. The Soviets became a powerful force during the 1917 revolution, representing the interests of the common people and challenging the existing power structures. After the February Revolution, as the provisional government struggled to maintain order and legitimacy, the Soviets grew in influence and power, becoming a central player in the unfolding drama of the Russian Revolution. The Petrograd Soviet, located in the capital, emerged as a key player, challenging the authority of the provisional government and asserting its own vision for Russia's future. The Soviets were not a monolithic entity, they were a diverse and dynamic collection of councils, each reflecting the unique concerns and aspirations of their constituents. They encompassed a wide range of political views, from moderate socialists who sought gradual reform to radical Bolsheviks who advocated for a complete overthrow of the existing order. This diversity of opinions often led to heated debates and internal struggles within the Soviets. These debates were a testament to the vibrant and participatory nature of Soviet democracy, but they also highlighted the challenges of achieving consensus in a time of crisis. The key question facing the Soviets was one of power. Should they share power with the provisional government, or should they strive to establish complete control? This question was not merely theoretical, it was a matter of life and death, as the future of Russia hung in the balance. This question would be at the heart of the struggle for Russia's future. The answer would determine the course of the Russian Revolution and shape the destiny of the Soviet Union for decades to come. The rise of the Soviets was not just a political phenomenon, it was a profound social movement that sought to redefine power and governance in one of the world's largest and most diverse nations.